Your hair is a distraction, Principal Griggs barked, pointing at Malik's afro as if it were some kind of crime scene evidence. Two burly security guards flanked him, their presence making the classroom feel like a courtroom mid-trial. Malik froze, his heart pounding in his chest as whispers erupted around him. Griggs's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "Step outside now, Mr. Rivers." Before Malik could even protest, the guards moved toward him, gripping his arms tightly. He stumbled forward, his face burning with humiliation as his classmates whipped out their phones to film the spectacle. "Guess he should have stuck to braids," one student sneered from the back row. Another laughed nervously and muttered, "This is why they don't let us wear what we want." Malik's mind raced. Was this really happening? Over his hair? His natural hair, the same style he'd worn proudly since middle school without issue. Now, suddenly, it was a problem? As he was dragged down the hallway, the stares of other students followed him, each pair of eyes feeling heavier than the last. The shame clawed at him, but beneath it simmered something else. Anger. Pure, unrelenting anger. And just when Malik thought things couldn't get worse, Griggs leaned in close enough for only Malik to hear. "You think you're special? We won't tolerate defiance here." Defiance? All Malik had done was show up to class being himself, but as the heavy double doors slammed shut behind him, he knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. Malik sat alone in the office waiting area, replaying the morning's events in his head. How had everything spiraled so quickly? It wasn't just about today. It never was. This afro wasn't just hair, it was part of who he was. A symbol of his heritage, his identity, his pride. Growing up, his grandmother used to tell him stories about how her generation fought for the right to embrace their natural selves without fear of judgment. And now, decades later, here he was facing the same battle all over again. He clenched, his fists trying to push away the wave of embarrassment threatening to overwhelm him. No matter how hard he tried, though, the jeers echoed in his ears. The laughter, the mockery. They weren't just attacking his appearance. They were attacking his existence. But Malik wasn't someone who gave up easily. At 16, he was already known as the sharpest debater on the school team, capable of dismantling any argument thrown his way. He dreamed of becoming a lawyer someday, fighting for justice and equality. This moment felt personal because it hit too close to home, like a preview of the battles he might face in the future. Still, sitting there, he couldn't shake the sinking feeling that maybe this time he wouldn't win. Principal Griggs returned to the main office shortly after, carrying himself with an air of superiority that made Malik's skin crawl. The man adjusting his tie before addressing the secretary, his tone dripping with condescension. "Make sure this goes on record," he said, handing her a slip of paper. "Violation of grooming policy. Disruptive behavior." Malik wanted to scream, to demand answers, but he bit his tongue. He'd seen enough interactions between Griggs and minority students over the years to know how these conversations usually went. There was Jamal, who got suspended last year for wearing do-rags under his baseball cap, or Maria, whose hoop earrings were deemed too large despite white girls sporting similar accessories without consequence. Griggs thrived on control, enforcing rules selectively to maintain what he called order. To Malik, it felt more like oppression, a quiet, insidious form of racism that hid behind policies and procedures. As Griggs finally turned his attention back to Malik, his expression hardened. "You understand why this is unacceptable, don't you?" he asked, not bothering to mask his disdain. Malik swallowed hard, his jaw tightening. "No, sir, I don't," he replied, surprising even himself with the steadiness of his voice. "I showed up ready to learn. Nothing about my hair stops me or anyone else from doing that." For a split second, Griggs looked taken aback, but then his lips curled into a smirk, and he simply walked away, leaving Malik seething with frustration. By the time Malik arrived home, the weight of the day had settled heavily on his shoulders. His mother, Dr. Simone Rivers, greeted him with concern etched across her face. "What happened, baby?" she asked gently, pulling him into a hug. Malik hesitated, unsure where to begin. When he finally recounted the events, his voice cracked with emotion. "It's not fair, Mom. Why does everyone have to look the same? Why can't I just be me?" Simone sighed, her own pain evident in her eyes. She'd faced similar struggles during her early days as a pediatrician, often pressured to straighten her curls or tone down her appearance to fit in. "I wish I had an answer for you," she admitted softly. "Sometimes it feels like no matter how far we come, there's always someone trying to hold us back." Her words offered little comfort, and Malik could sense her frustration. For all her accomplishments, Simone still carried the scars of systemic bias, and now, watching her son endure the same treatment, broke her heart. Just as tensions began to rise, the doorbell rang. Simone glanced at Malik, confusion flickering across her features. Who could that be at this hour? She wondered aloud. When she opened the door, Malik's breath caught in his throat. Standing there was Trevor Rivers Sr., his estranged father. The man exuded authority, his sharp suit and commanding presence filling the doorway. Without waiting for an invitation, Trevor stepped inside, his gaze locking onto Malik. "We need to talk," he said firmly, his tone leaving no room for argument. Trevor wasted no time getting to the point. Seated at the kitchen table, he flipped through the school handbook Malik had brought home earlier. His lips pressed into a thin line as he landed on the section detailing the grooming policy. "This clause is deliberately discriminatory," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Malik watched silently, unsure what to make of this sudden intrusion. He hadn't seen his father in years, not since his parents' bitter divorce, and yet here he was, diving headfirst into the mess Griggs had created. "This isn't just about your hair," Trevor continued, his voice low but intense. "It's about power, control. They're sending a message whether they realize it or not." For the first time, Malik saw a flicker of admiration in his mother's eyes as she listened to Trevor speak. Despite their fractured relationship, there was no denying the man's expertise. As a renowned civil rights attorney, Trevor had spent decades dismantling policies like this one. But as Trevor closed the handbook and reached for his phone, Malik couldn't help but wonder what he was planning. Whoever Trevor dialed, the conversation was brief and cryptic. "It's done," Trevor said after hanging up, a glint of determination in his eyes. Done. What exactly had he set in motion? And more importantly, how would Griggs respond when he realized who he'd truly crossed? The next day, Principal Griggs made his intentions clear. During morning announcements, his voice boomed over the intercom like a gavel striking a verdict. "Effective immediately. All students must adhere strictly to our grooming policies. Failure to comply will result in suspension, or worse." The threat hung in the air, heavy and unspoken. Malik clenched his fists under his desk as murmurs rippled through the classroom. It wasn't just him anymore. Griggs had widened the net. Across campus, other black students were being targeted. A sophomore girl named Tia was sent home for wearing braids adorned with colorful beads. Another boy, Marcus, faced detention for refusing to shave off his goatee. Word spread quickly, igniting whispers of outrage among marginalized students. Some felt defeated, resigned to conforming rather than risking punishment. Others simmered, with quiet anger, unsure how to fight back but knowing they couldn't stay silent forever. For Malik, it was personal now. Every new victim reinforced the injustice he'd experienced firsthand. He saw himself in their faces, their frustration, their fear, their determination not to let this break them. As the hours ticked by, Malik found himself becoming a reluctant figurehead, a symbol of resistance against Griggs' authoritarian rule. Students began approaching him between classes, seeking advice or simply solidarity, but with every step forward came a fresh wave of doubt. Could one person really stand up to an entire system? Or would standing out only make him a bigger target? By midweek, cracks began to form in Malik's support system. It started subtly, a glance averted here, a conversation cut short there. Then came Ms. Carter, Malik's history teacher, who pulled him aside after class. Her tone was apologetic but firm. "I know you're passionate about this, Malik," she said, avoiding eye contact. But maybe it's easier if everyone just follows the rules. You don't want to give people a reason to treat you differently. Her words hit like a slap, cutting deeper than any insult from Griggs ever could. Wasn't that exactly what they were doing, treating him differently because of his race? Malik bit back a retort, forcing himself to nod politely instead. But inside, he seethed. Worse still was Jared, Malik's best friend since elementary school. At first, Jared had been vocal in his support, calling Griggs' policy ridiculous and promising to back Malik no matter what. Yet as the days passed, something shifted. Jared stopped sitting with Malik at lunch, claiming he needed to focus on studying. When Malik confronted him, Jared shrugged sheepishly. "People are talking, man. I can't afford to get caught up in this drama." Betrayal stung sharper than rejection. Jared's abandonment left Malik feeling more isolated than ever, but it also hardened his resolve. If even those closest to him couldn't stand by his side, then he'd have to find strength within himself, and from others willing to take a stand. That evening, Trevor returned to Malik's house armed with stacks of documents and research notes. His expression was grim but focused as he laid everything out on the dining room table. "This isn't just your school," he explained, pointing to highlighted sections of reports and articles. "Policies like these exist nationwide, disproportionately, targeting black students. They frame cultural expressions as unprofessional or disruptive, when really it's about control." Simone leaned in, her brow furrowed. "How do we fight something so entrenched?" she asked quietly. Trevor tapped a document revealing connections between Griggs and a conservative education board notorious for pushing discriminatory agendas. "We expose it," he replied. "Show the world exactly what they're doing. Once people see the pattern, they won't be able to ignore it." Malik listened intently, absorbing every word. For the first time, he understood the scope of the battle ahead. Not just against Griggs, but against a deeply rooted system designed to keep minorities in line. It was daunting, overwhelming even. But buried beneath the weight of responsibility lay a spark of hope. If Trevor believed they could win, maybe, just maybe, they stood a chance. Still, questions lingered. Who else might join their cause? And how far would Griggs go to protect his reputation? 2 days later, Malik received a message from someone unexpected. Lila Monroe, a junior known for her investigative journalism skills. She approached him cautiously during lunch, clutching a small digital recorder. "I heard what happened," she began, glancing around to ensure no one was listening. "And I think I can help." Lila revealed that she'd secretly recorded Griggs berating another student, a senior named Jamal, for wearing dreadlocks. In the audio, Griggs's voice dripped with disdain as he accused Jamal of making excuses for breaking the rules. The clip was damning, undeniable proof of Griggs' bias. "This is huge," Malik breathed, awe mixed with gratitude. "Why are you helping me?" Lila hesitated, her gaze softening. "Because I've seen enough kids like us get pushed around. Someone needs to hold them accountable." With Lila's evidence, Malik felt a renewed sense of purpose. Together, they brainstormed ways to use the recording strategically, ensuring maximum impact. But timing would be crucial. If Griggs caught wind of their plan too soon, he might retaliate harder than ever. As Malik thanked Lila, a thought struck him. Maybe he wasn't alone after all. Maybe there were others ready to rise alongside him. Later, that night, tensions flared once again between Simone and Trevor. While cleaning up dinner dishes, Simone finally voiced the doubts gnawing at her. "You talk about fighting systems, Trevor, but have you thought about what this could cost, Malik? What could it cost us?" Trevor paused, setting down the plate he'd been drying. "Of course I've thought about it," he said sharply. "But staying silent costs us more. Look at you. How many times did you change yourself to fit into spaces that weren't built for you? How many times did you sacrifice pieces of who you are just to survive?" Simone flinched, tears welling in her eyes. "Survival is different from provoking a fight we may not win." Their raised voices drew Malik to the doorway where he hovered silently, torn between guilt and admiration. He'd always known his parents clashed over priorities, but hearing them argue now illuminated the deeper scars racism had left on their lives. Before either could say more, Trevor softened slightly. "Simone, I'm not asking you to relive your pain. I'm asking you to trust me, to trust that we can create a better future for Malik, for all of us." Simone didn't respond, her silence heavy with conflicted emotions. Meanwhile, Malik retreated to his room, grappling with the weight of their shared history and the uncertain path ahead. The next morning, Trevor arrived at the house with a folder that looked like it had seen better days. Its edges were worn, its contents hastily assembled, but what lay inside would change everything. "I stayed up all night digging," he said, sliding the folder across the kitchen table to Malik and Simone, "and I found something explosive." Malik leaned forward, his heart racing as Trevor revealed the truth. Years ago, Griggs had been embroiled in a lawsuit over nearly identical grooming policies. A black student expelled under those rules filed a discrimination claim, which Griggs fought tooth and nail until settling quietly out of court. The settlement included a non-disclosure agreement, effectively burying the scandal before it could gain traction. "This man doesn't just enforce racist policies," Trevor said, his voice low but seething with controlled fury. "He's spent decades covering them up, silencing anyone who dares challenge him." Simone's hands trembled as she flipped through the documents. "How is this even legal?" she whispered, her disbelief giving way to anger. But Trevor wasn't finished. As if sensing their shock wasn't enough, he dropped another bombshell. Griggs's own son had attended Malik's school years earlier and faced expulsion for violating the same grooming code. Back then, Griggs had fought tirelessly to overturn the decision, arguing that his child deserved leniency despite breaking the rules. "Hypocrisy at its finest," Trevor muttered, shaking his head. "He demands conformity from everyone else while bending the rules for his own family." Malik sat back, stunned. This revelation wasn't just about exposing Griggs. It was about dismantling the carefully constructed facade of fairness he'd hidden behind for so long. But as empowering as the discovery felt, it also raised new questions. Could they prove Griggs's past wrongdoing without risking retaliation? And how far would he go to protect his secrets now that they were closing? By Friday, word of Malik's fight had spread beyond the school walls. Social media buzzed with hashtags like "Hair is not a distraction" and "Stand with Malik," drawing attention from local news outlets and activists alike. Encouraged by Lila's footage and Trevor's findings, Malik decided it was time to take matters into his own hands. That afternoon, he gathered a group of students in the library after classes ended. They came cautiously at first, unsure whether standing up to Griggs was worth the risk, but soon the room filled with voices eager to be heard. "This isn't just about me anymore," Malik began, addressing the crowd. "It's about every single one of us who's ever been told we don't belong because of how we look or dress or speak." His words struck a chord, igniting passionate discussions about identity, representation, and resistance. By the end of the meeting, plans were underway for a school-wide walkout scheduled for Monday morning. Flyers were designed, social media campaigns launched, and allies recruited, all under Malik's leadership. On the day of the protest, hundreds of students poured onto the front lawn, chanting slogans and holding signs that read, "Our hair is our heritage," and "End systemic bias now." Reporters swarmed the scene, capturing every moment. When reporters approached Malik for comment, he stepped forward, microphone in hand, and delivered an impassioned speech that sent shockwaves through the community. "Our hair isn't a distraction. It's our history, our culture, our pride," he declared, his voice steady despite the cameras flashing around him. "And no policy, no principle, no system will ever take that away from us." As the video of his speech went viral online, support flooded in from across the country. For the first time, Malik allowed himself to believe they might actually win this fight. Still, victory remained uncertain. Griggs wasn't going down without a fight, and neither was the system he represented. Faced with mounting pressure, Principal Griggs called an emergency press conference late Monday evening. Standing behind a podium emblazoned with the school's crest, he attempted to justify his actions, portraying the grooming policy as a necessary measure to maintain order and professionalism. "These standards are in place for a reason," he insisted, his tone rehearsed yet defensive. "They ensure equality among students, regardless of background or personal choices." Reporters fired back with pointed questions, citing the protests, leaked recordings, and Trevor's evidence of systemic bias. Griggs grew visibly flustered, beads of sweat forming on his forehead as he struggled to deflect accusations. When asked directly about his son's prior expulsion and subsequent leniency, Griggs stammered, unable to provide a coherent response. The crowd murmured disapprovingly, sensing cracks in his carefully crafted narrative. Malik watched from the sidelines, his stomach churning with anticipation. He knew this was only the beginning. The real showdown was still to come. Unable to resist any longer, Malik pushed through the throng of reporters and stepped toward the podium. "Mr. Griggs," he called out, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade. All eyes turned to him, including Griggs, whose expression shifted from irritation to thinly veiled panic. "You keep saying these rules are fair," Malik continued, his tone unwavering. "But they're not. They target people like me. People who dare to exist authentically. You can dress it up however you want, but the truth is plain for everyone to see." Griggs sneered, attempting to regain control of the situation. "Your defiance proves my point exactly," he shot back. "Students should focus on learning, not grandstanding for attention." The jab hit hard, but Malik refused to back down. "If standing up for myself makes me defiant, then fine. I'll wear that label proudly. Because silence won't fix what you've broken." The tension between them crackled like electricity, drawing gasps from the audience. Just as Griggs prepared to deliver another dismissive retort, a sudden commotion erupted near the back of the room. Lila emerged, holding her phone aloft as she played her secret recording for everyone to hear. Griggs froze mid-sentence, his face pale with horror. The game had changed, and he was losing ground fast. The recording played loudly, echoing through the crowded room like a gavel striking its final blow. Griggs's voice, cold, condescending, and unmistakably biased, filled the air as he berated Jamal over his dreadlocks. "You're making excuses," the taped voice sneered. "This isn't about culture. It's about compliance." Gasps rippled through the audience, followed by murmurs of outrage. Reporters scrambled to capture reactions on camera, while students exchanged triumphant glances. For Malik, the moment felt surreal, a culmination of weeks of fear, frustration, and determination finally breaking through the surface. Griggs stammered, visibly shaken. That's taken out of context," he protested weakly, but his words fell flat against the undeniable evidence. Lila stood firm, her chin lifted in quiet defiance. "If it's out of context, then explain yourself," she challenged, her voice cutting through the chaos. Malik stepped forward again, locking eyes with Griggs. "Explain why you enforce these rules only against black students. Explain why your own son got special treatment when he broke them. Or better yet..." He paused, letting the weight of his next words sink in. "Explain how you think silencing us will make this go away." For the first time, Griggs looked cornered, truly, irrevocably exposed. His carefully constructed facade crumbled before the world's eyes, leaving behind only the ugly truth. But just as the crowd began to close in, Trevor appeared at Malik's side, holding up the folder of damning documents. "This isn't over," Trevor said firmly, addressing both Griggs and the reporters. "Not even close." Trevor wasted no time seizing control of the narrative. With reporters scribbling furiously and cameras rolling, he laid out the full scope of Griggs's hypocrisy. Years ago, Principal Griggs faced a lawsuit over discriminatory grooming policies, Trevor began, his tone calm but authoritative. He settled quietly out of court, burying the case under layers of secrecy. And now, he enforces those same policies with ruthless precision, unless, of course, it affects his own family. He held up photocopies of the settlement agreement and disciplinary records, ensuring every detail was visible to the press. This man doesn't believe in fairness or equality. He believes in power, and maintaining it at any cost. Griggs tried to interrupt, sputtering denials and accusations of slander, but Trevor cut him off effortlessly. "Save your excuses," he snapped, his patience wearing thin. "Your actions speak louder than anything you could say right now." As the media frenzy intensified, Simone joined Malik and Trevor on stage, symbolizing their united front. Her presence added emotional weight to the unfolding drama, reminding everyone of the generational toll such discrimination exacted. Meanwhile, Griggs retreated a step, his confidence shattered. Yet even as the tide turned decisively against him, one question lingered in Malik's mind. Would this be enough to dismantle the system Griggs represented? Or would another figure rise to take his place? By the end of the press conference, public opinion had swung sharply in Malik's favor. Social media erupted with calls for accountability, petitions demanding policy reform, and pledges of support from activists nationwide. Within hours, the EO school board announced an emergency meeting to address the growing controversy and suspended Griggs' pending investigation. Back at home, Malik allowed himself a rare moment of relief. Sitting in the living room surrounded by his family, he replayed the events in his mind, still struggling to process everything that had happened. "We did it," he murmured, more to himself than anyone else. But Simone shook her head gently, her expression thoughtful. "No, baby," she corrected. "You did it. You stood up when so many others stayed silent." Trevor nodded in agreement, pride evident in his eyes. "This is just the beginning," he added. "One victory doesn't fix the system, but it opens doors for change, doors you'll have to keep pushing through." Malik absorbed their words, feeling a mix of gratitude and responsibility settle over him. This fight wasn't just about him anymore. It never had been. It was about every student who'd ever been told they didn't belong because of who they were. As the night wore on, Malik scrolled through messages of support flooding his phone. Among them was a direct message from a national advocacy group inviting him to speak at an upcoming summit on racial justice. His heart swelled with possibility. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time Malik truly believed they could rewrite the rules. Later that week, Trevor finally revealed the identity of his mysterious contact, a former colleague of Griggs named Evelyn Carter, who'd worked alongside him during the earlier lawsuit. Over coffee one afternoon, Evelyn recounted her reasons for stepping forward after all these years. "I couldn't live with myself knowing I'd let him get away with this for so long," she admitted, her voice heavy with regret. "When I heard what he was doing to Malik, I knew it was time to act." Her courage inspired Malik profoundly, reinforcing the importance of allies in the fight for justice. Together they reviewed additional documents Evelyn provided, uncovering further evidence of systemic bias within the district. With each new revelation, Malik's resolve deepened. This wasn't just a battle against one man. It was a war against a mindset that sought to erase entire cultures. And with people like Evelyn standing beside him, Malik felt ready to face whatever came next. In the days following Griggs's suspension, Malik found himself transformed. No longer the reluctant figurehead thrust into activism, he embraced his role as a leader with newfound confidence, mentoring younger students, organizing workshops on cultural identity, and speaking at community events became second nature to him. "You've changed," Jared remarked one afternoon, approaching Malik cautiously after weeks of silence. I know you always had guts, but now, you're unstoppable." Malik smiled faintly, acknowledging the compliment without lingering on it. "It's not about being fearless," he replied. "It's about deciding that fear won't stop you anymore." Jared hesitated, guilt flickering across his features. "Look, I owe you an apology," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. I let fear dictate my actions back then. I should have stood by you." To his surprise, Malik nodded understandingly. "Apology accepted," he said simply. "But don't just tell me. Show me. Stand with me now. That's all that matters." Jared promised to do better. Malik felt a sense of closure wash over him. Healing wasn't linear, but progress was possible. One ally, one conversation, one step at a time. Yet even as personal wounds began to mend, larger battles loomed on the horizon. The national campaign against discriminatory grooming codes gained momentum, drawing attention to similar cases across the country. Malik knew his work was far from finished, but for the first time he welcomed the challenge. The transformation wasn't limited to Malik alone. His family dynamic shifted as well. Simone and Trevor, once divided by bitterness and unresolved grievances, found common ground in their shared mission to support Malik. One evening, after a long day of strategizing with advocacy groups, Simone turned to Trevor with an uncharacteristic softness in her voice. "I never thought I'd say this," she began, "but thank you for stepping up, for believing in Malik when I wasn't sure how to." Trevor nodded, his usual stoic demeanor giving way to vulnerability. "I've made mistakes, Simone, too many to count, but seeing Malik fight like this, it reminds me why I chose this path in the first place. Justice isn't just my job, it's our legacy." Their reconciliation didn't erase years of estrangement, but it marked a turning point. For Malik, witnessing his parents unite, even if only temporarily, was a healing balm for wounds he hadn't fully acknowledged. It reinforced the idea that standing against oppression required more than individual courage. It demanded collective strength. As they sat together around the kitchen table, mapping out next steps for the growing movement, Malik felt a profound sense of belonging, not just within his family, but within the larger community rallying behind him. Still lingering questions remained. Could their fragile alliance withstand the pressure of what was to come? And would Malik's leadership inspire others to rise up, or leave them vulnerable to backlash? Within weeks, Malik's story transcended local headlines, sparking a nationwide conversation about discriminatory grooming codes. Advocacy organizations seized the momentum, launching campaigns to challenge similar policies in schools and workplaces across the country. Hashtags like Hair Equality Now trended on social media, accompanied by stories from individuals who had faced similar discrimination. Malik became the face of the movement, invited to speak at rallies, panel discussions, and legislative hearings. His speeches, infused with raw emotion and unwavering conviction, resonated deeply with audiences. "Systemic racism doesn't always look like hate," he declared during one particularly powerful address. "Sometimes it looks like rules, disguised as fairness. But no matter how it presents itself, its purpose is the same: to silence us, to erase us." The response was overwhelming. Students organized protests in solidarity, teachers petitioned for policy reforms, and lawmakers introduced bills aimed at banning discriminatory practices. Even celebrities joined the cause, amplifying Malik's message to millions. Yet amid the whirlwind of attention, Malik remained grounded. He knew visibility came with risks, scrutiny, criticism, even threats, but he refused to let fear dictate his actions. Every interview, every speech, every interaction served a greater purpose, proving that small acts of courage could spark monumental change. Still, the journey was far from over. As victories mounted, so did resistance. Opponents argued that such movements undermined authority and tradition, attempting to frame cultural expression as disruptive or unprofessional. The battle lines were redrawn, forcing Malik and his allies to adapt and persevere. Months later, the impact of Malik's activism rippled outward, touching lives in ways he couldn't have imagined. Schools revised outdated policies, corporations reevaluated workplace standards, and communities engaged in honest conversations about identity and inclusion. The national campaign gained traction, culminating in landmark legislation, protecting cultural expressions like hairstyles from discriminatory enforcement. For Malik, the most rewarding moments came not on grand stages, but in quieter, intimate settings. Mentoring younger students who looked up to him as a role model, he encouraged them to embrace their identities without apology. Your hair, your clothes, your voice, they're all part of who you are, he told them. And there's nothing wrong with being unapologetically yourself. His words carried weight because they were rooted in experience. Through every setback and triumph, Malik had learned that resilience wasn't about avoiding pain. It was about enduring it, growing stronger, and emerging ready to fight another day. As he stood before a group of wide-eyed middle schoolers, sharing his story and answering their questions, Malik allowed himself a moment of quiet pride. This wasn't just about him anymore. It never had been. It was about planting seeds of hope and empowerment, knowing they would grow into something far greater than he could achieve alone. But even as progress unfolded, Malik understood the work was ongoing. Systemic racism wasn't a single adversary to defeat. It was a persistent force requiring constant vigilance. And though the road ahead remained uncertain, Malik faced it with clarity and purpose. After all, the fight for justice wasn't just his. It belonged to everyone willing to stand up and say, enough.